In 1997, Squaresoft released Final Fantasy VII, and the gaming culture was changed forever. Final Fantasy VII to this day is considered one of, if not the greatest video game ever created. But time has not exactly been kind to Final Fantasy VII. Yes, overall the game is still in a playable state, but a game on hardware limitations of the early PlayStation 1 simply cannot resonate with modern audiences. There have been many mods attempting to fix the issues that the original game had, from translation errors to plot holes to graphics. There have been sequels that further enriched and extended lore to recapture the magic that Final Fantasy VII had. Cameo appearances such as Smash and Kingdom Hearts. It's been 23 years since the original game's released, and now that game has finally been given its much needed facelift. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is officially out to retell this amazing tale in a more fleshed out way, so much that it'll be split across multiple games. The Final Fantasy VII Remake was released in April of 2020. It is just part 1 and showcases Midgar and expands on this legendary video game city. So, how do you remake one of the best video games of all time?
You made it.
Full disclosure here, this will not be the place to talk about or show major spoilers. There will more than likely be some minor spoilers in this review. You have been warned.
Grab a seat.
Before we get too far into this review, I just want to state how I review games. I have a step-by-step process that accumulates to a total number. I then get the average out of the scores to get my final number. This was made as not only a way to analyze every single aspect of a video game, but it's also a way to prevent my overall feelings towards something going too far in how great a game actually is. For example, The Last of Us is a game that I believe many people love, and if I were to put it into the system, it would check off many high scores. However, I am not someone that enjoys that game. Yes, I recognize how people can like it, I simply just do not. We have a weird case here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. No, it is not a perfect 10. And because of that, it will not tie for my highest scored game I've ever reviewed. It has some problems that are kinda annoying, but I can honestly sit here and say, it is, in my opinion, the best PlayStation 4 game by a landslide. You start off like you would in Final Fantasy VII. Ex-soldier Cloud Strife jumps off the train after Biggs, Jesse, Wedge, and Barrett. You beat up some soldiers and make your way to the Mako reactor. The opening level is just as great as the original level, and is nearly a one-to-one recreation. You get introduced to some characters, to the combat, and you're on your way. There was one scene that was hinted at in the original, but not shown, that now you see, and then the reactor blows up. Now the real remake begins to take full effect. In the original game, the next scene was a few pre-rendered backgrounds and that's it. In this game, it's a full-on dedicated chapter to the people of Midgar, injured and dead in what is possibly your fault. And this is what the remake does over and over again. It takes scenes from the original game. Scenes, while important to world building, could seemingly be glossed over into a full-on experience, one where you get to see and sink into. It has been greatly expanded, and overall, it is not only a welcome addition, but is almost absolutely perfect.
Is that right?
There are some more significant changes that I won't go over here, but I do believe that we have not gone far away from the original game story. Some people online are a little worried about where it's headed, but I'm not one of those people. I believe we are right where we should be, with a possible whole other element that I cannot wait to dive into, or it is something just to get us talking. The characters of this game are just as good. No, that's not true. They're significantly better than what you remembered.
20-something?
First.
Huh?
Soldier first class. Doesn't go into the 20s.
The hell you talking about? I mean your age, not your goddamn rank. Though for all I know, a soldier's rank could be the same as his age. Guess that'd make you a 1-year-old, huh? Live and learn.
With the story being more fleshed out than ever before, we really get to see each character shine. Because this is just the Midgar section, the game is heavily focused on the eco-terrorist group AVALANCHE. They fight against Shinra to save the planet, but do so in extreme ways that may or may not actually be doing more bad than good.
Enjoy.
A part of me wants to say that Barrett really stole the show here. His voice actor, the way his character moved, the passion he had for the planet, his hate for Shinra, his skepticism in Cloud, his love for his Avalanche team, and his daughter Marlene really come across strongly.
I'm sorry, honey. I wish I didn't have to. I wish I could be with you all the time. I really do. But if I stay here, I can't fight out there. Some bad people are trying to hurt the planet. And Daddy and his friends are trying to stop those bad people. The slums, your friends, the whole planet. It's Daddy's job to protect it. And that's why I've got to go.
Tifa, Cloud's childhood friend who has guilt over everything Avalanche does, who worries about everything around her and everyone around her, and does her part to help everyone, albeit with caution. She is not so black and white, and she often wonders if Avalanche is actually doing good things or not for Midgar.
It was us. We did this.
Aerith, oh my god, Aerith. Sweet, loving, kind, always giving back, but also fun, adventurous, and a little bit innocent. You really get attached to her on your journey. I'm not sure I'm really ready for the future.
Because I'm not sick of you yet.
They've even expanded in Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse.
Let's talk more after I'm done here, okay?
Biggs kind of has that nice guy, tough guy, cool guy appeal. Wedge, a big goof who's always hungry, takes care of cats, and admittedly is a little bit of a wuss. And Jessie, wow. She went from someone that had zero personality to rivaling Tifa and Aerith. Jessie is a flirt, a charismatic one at that. She makes her feelings known early and intends to go through with them.
Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate? Just let go already.
Only if you promise to come back tomorrow night. Deal?
She isn't a damsel in distress. She's a bit of a nutcase that gets in and out of trouble easily. She also now has her own reason to hate Shinra, which gives his character more motives than we've ever seen. There's even a mission in this game that details further about all three of these Avalanche members. We get more info on them than we got on Sephiroth in the whole first 10 hours of the original game. Speaking of the Silver Soldier, he may have not shown his face much in the original, but he's here, and he's here in full force. Some scenes have been altered late in the game so you see it happen on screen, but he is making his own mark throughout the whole game, constantly harassing Cloud's psyche. It's a fun way to tell what's going on in Cloud's head, and he is constantly wondering if it's real or not.
There's still so much to be done.
And because of this, our main character Cloud gets significantly expanded. In the original, there were a few scenes here and there early on in Midgar that gave Cloud a mental breakdown. In this game, they're still pretty infrequent, but they take much more liberties on it. Cloud now has frequent flashbacks to his childhood as early as the opening bombing run. He even sees what seems to be glances into the future. Throughout all of this though, he is not as distant to others as much as he was. Instead, he will actually have conversations while having a drink with Tifa, smiles in the funny moment with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge.
Is that a smile I spy?
It's not safe here. We should go.
Copy that.
And constantly reflects back with Tifa and Aerith on what's going on or what is happening. It is the same Cloud, not interested in most things, but this Cloud seems to be a little more human. He shows way more emotion while maintaining that stern, super serious mood that he is known for.
If you want to talk, I'm listening.
Huh? What's with you all of a sudden?
With me?
Like you're losing that hard edge.
That bad?
Not at all. I like it. Maybe Marlene won't be so scared of you next time.
There are also some new characters in this game that show up from time to time, but they don't overstay their welcome and never really steal the show of the main characters.
As if I could ever grow tired of your company.
It's hard to tell who really stole the show here, but the people of Midgar have to be up there. When you're in town or even between them or in a chapter, NPCs will talk to each other and react to what's going on in the world, what you look like, what you're up to, your progress, your side missions, you name it, they've probably said it. And there are tons of these people on the streets. Admittedly, the graphics in these areas seem to be a lower quality as well with the skybox at times. I do not think they're a big problem, however. I simply think that the PlayStation Pro cannot run this game to a maximum potential.
Rather have one of you than 20 of them.
In more linear story missions, this game is the best looking game in the market. In these town open world like areas, it takes a hit.
An anomaly?
When this game goes to PC or maybe the PlayStation 5, we'll see what it's really made of. I bet for sure those SSDs will be able to load in those textures faster. This game also runs beautifully. It never goes below 30 frames per second, and at times I even thought it was at 60 FPS. It probably isn't, and it was more than likely just in my head. In those side missions like open areas, it's definitely at 30, and like I said, it does take a graphical hit, but there are so many different NPCs in the screen, all acted differently, and it's absolutely amazing to see how alive these places are. There are also a lot of side missions that you can get here. They are amazing. Their story missions are incredibly long at times, but it never misses a beat. Everything seems paced extremely well, which does make sense since it's still technically the original story. I felt hyped, I laughed, I cried, even got the creeps at one point, but never did any mission, main or side, feel like a bad mission to me. You know what else never felt bad? The sound design.
Nothing to it.
Everything from hearing the Buster Sword swipe across the screen, which also looks phenomenal with its proper use of motion blur, to the way that the magic sounds is just tremendous. The voice acting of both the NPCs and the main cast are superb. Oh yeah, and the music. This is the greatest soundtrack in video game history, and I don't think it's really even close. There is not one bad song in the soundtrack, and there is not one bad use of it. Every section has its own unique song, often remade from the original game and has been turned up to 11 on the greatness level. There are also multiple versions of each song. When it goes from calm to fighting, it will gradually change in a perfect swift motion from one amazing track to another amazing track. Slight spoiler here, so skip ahead to the timestamp if you don't want it. My favorite Final Fantasy track ever is in this game. It was in the original game, matter of fact. And they have remade it to make it even more epic than it was before. And it's straight up the most epic and intense thing that I have ever heard in a video game. You know which one I'm talking about. And it comes at the very end of the original game, and it's here as well. And I love it. Absolutely adore it. Being a remake, there are also plenty of references and Easter eggs. Stuff from the original game is obviously there, but there are also a lot of Easter eggs to Crisis Core. I'm sure everyone knows about the Banera White posters in the opening level, but have you noticed how Cloud attacks? Not only does he have his original stance from the original game, as well as a stance that is similar to his hero Sephiroth, he also attacks a lot like Zack did in Crisis Core. This game looks like a love letter to fans of the original game, both in graphics and its references. The gameplay has changed from the turn-based combat of the original. Sort of. Looking at the combat at surface value, it might seem like a hack and slash game, but it's not. Oh my goodness, it is not. You press square to attack, yes, and R1 to block, but the main goal of attacking is to get your ATB gauge up, and when you get those ATB meters, you can use your character's abilities, spells, or items. A new mechanic to the game is weapon upgrades.
I know I'd never pass up a chance to improve my gear. Come on, at least let me show you how it's done.
When you level up, you gain SP. You use that SP to upgrade your weapons. Seems simple, right? Well, every single one of your weapons level up when you do, which means the newest weapon might not be the strongest weapon. The reason to swap weapons is to unlock its ability. If you use a weapon enough, then you get its ability on any weapon you use. From there, it's up to you on which weapon to use in what situation. Personally, I always use whichever had the most materia slots. We'll come back to the materia system a little later. Every character plays their own way. Cloud is more of a jack-of-all-trades character. He has a strong melee, he has strong magic. You can also switch to Punisher mode, which is a must. If you block a melee attack while in Punisher mode, you will automatically counter. It can help the stagger meter, which is where the enemy takes much more damage, does more damage, and it helps your ATB gauge. The trade-off is that you lose a lot of mobility while in Punisher mode. You got Tifa, the monk class of the Final Fantasy VII. If you want to use Final Fantasy class terms, that is. She's quick, she's fast, and she's strong. She does seem a little more nimble, however. I always feel like she's the one taking more damage than the rest of the party. But when you use her right, she can pack a punch. She has an ability to improve her strikes up to a level 3, and when you unleash these things back to back, it will do tons of damage and fill that stagger meter quickly. Barrett has a gun for an arm, so naturally, he shoots his gun. Duh. Now he does have weapons that can turn him from a long-range attacker to a melee attacker, and while he is extremely strong, he is also extremely slow. So be careful when using those weapons. I used him more as a long-range tank, which works well with his character and some of his abilities. His overcharge ability really gets his ATB up quickly, and he has some of my favorite abilities in the whole game. Aerith is the most straightforward character in the game. She's the mage. Her abilities are for support and doing heavy magic damage. Her arcane ward, for instance, doubles in how much magic gets used per ATB. So if an enemy doesn't like fire, he is going to get messed up if you use fire inside that ward. Aerith's ATB also filled up incredibly quickly. Though I didn't use her Tempest ability very often, she almost always had her ATB gauge up whenever I played as her. You can control whichever character you want while in battle and swap with a simple press of the button on the D-pad. If another character gets the ATB gauge up while you're not controlling them, you can control what they do by pressing the trigger. It works extremely well, and I think every single future Final Fantasy game should have this combat system. If you have trouble with it, I got one tip for you. Take it slow. Remember, this game was originally a turn-based combat game, and while it's not like that anymore, the combat mechanic is still there to represent the turns. Alright, sit down. I'm going to tell you about the greatest gameplay system of all time. The Materia system. It's simple, yet complex. It allows players to easily customize the way you play, but can potentially open up to an absolute amazing and almost overpowered experience. And this is just as great as it was in 1997, basically because very little has been changed from the original game. Each weapon and equipment has materia slots. You can stick materia in those slots, which will change what spells and abilities you do. Materia is in categories and are color-coded. Green materia are the magic spells, allowing you to do fire or blizzard. Purple materia changes your stats, mainly increasing your health or magic. Yellow gives you new abilities such as assess or scan in the older games, which allows you to view your enemy's stats and weaknesses. And then there's the blue materia that can be linked with other materia. Elemental materia can be linked and is something that will give your attacks more elemental damage. There are even some Final Fantasy XII Gambit-like materia with the synergy materia. Now, red materia are the summons. Summons can be used only at specific fights in specific places. They all have their own moves that we can control with an ATB gauge. If we don't use the ATB gauge to control, then they will still attack and act a bit like an NPC party member, which is great considering that the last Final Fantasy XV, the summons, well, they weren't very good. Before the summon leaves, it will use its ultimate attack, the attack they remember the most from all the previous games. This gives us some more freedom with the summons and which ones we use. It's a good modern take on the summons. The Materia system does open up a bit in the remake, but it's only a taste of what's to come. In the original, there were so many different materia combinations that just changed the gameplay drastically, but it's still just as fun as the original game. The gameplay and combat system is a fantastic reimagining of the original, but if you don't like it, even after you take it slower like I said, then try out classic mode. It does make it a little easier and kinda makes the characters go on autopilot, but I do enjoy it and I plan on doing a full playthrough with it. There is a slight concern with the camera. I was constantly finding the camera the whole time. Luckily, there are a lot of options to change and make it more comfortable for you, but it is something I need to bring up. As a complete package though, the combat system is fun, it's rewarding, and just an enjoyable experience from beginning to end in this 35 to 40 hour monster that is the part 1 of this story. So, how do you remake one of the best video games of all time? The answer is to make the best PlayStation 4 game of all time. This game was well worth the wait, well worth the $60, well worth the future money I'm going to put into the future installments on PC, PlayStation 5, and the other parts. If you haven't picked this up yet or can't because it's not in your preferred system of choice yet, then I would actually recommend playing the original Final Fantasy VII first. It's available on almost everything now and will make this already fantastic game an even more enjoyable experience. And if you don't feel like that, I would recommend finding out how to play Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It was a PlayStation Portable game, and that's all the information I'm going to give you. It is fantastic, however. Despite some weird texture issues and occasional blurry skyboxes, I think the PlayStation 4 is holding the game back, and a really funky but customizable camera, I give the Final Fantasy VII Remake a 9.7 out of 10. The game is an absolute blast to play, blast to theorize about the ending, and should have people talking for years to come. I can't wait for the next installment in the series to continue playing with these wonderful characters in this amazing world that's a part of this amazing story. Till then, we will have to have patience. Thank you for watching my review, and make sure to head over to my playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Remake or any other Final Fantasy games. I also have a wide variety on my channel. I'm sure there's something you will like on it.